You are now listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc, sharing insights through real, honest, and practical ways to improve your communication and relationships. Featuring your hosts, Dr. Pamela Kreiser, Meredith Edwards-Nagel, and Teighlor Polindo.
All right, you guys, listeners, friends, we are back with episode 100. It's kind of a big deal. And this week, we're doing an AFAF rewind. So what do we got, Dr. K?
Well, we are rewinding all the way back to episode 1. And episode 1, if you haven't listened to it, is called The Message Received is the One That Counts. Now, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I do want to tell you that it is a foundational episode for our podcast. So we'll listen to a clip on episode 1. And if you haven't heard it, great. But if you have heard it, it's worth a rewind.
So growing up, people said to me, don't be so sensitive. And I remember not figuring out how to manage hurtful messages as a kid. And so it took some time, but I remember a lot of people just dismissing, going, just don't take it that way. It's like really hard to just not do that.
Did you ever have somebody say, oh, you hurt your own feelings?
No.
That was my favorite.
How does that work?
Family member that you would say, that really hurt my feelings. You're too sensitive. You hurt your own feelings. Like you let your own feelings get hurt. and then how do you decipher their intention on that one?
I would say run. Only because it's like not just a sidestep. It's like a complete removal of responsibility. It's all you and you're crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I feel like we've completely lost the fact that being sensitive comes with like a lot of positive. And it's only viewed as very negative. And I remember seeing a friend, she's very sensitive. And at first it kind of bugged me. Like, no, I'm not always mad at you. And no, all these things she kind of believed. But then it gave her such empathy and the ability to like read a room and go to the lost soul and be very aware of other people's emotions. I thought that was really powerful. I don't know why it's always a negative.
Yeah, I think that is powerful. I think for anyone listening that has been told that you're being too sensitive, it's commenting on your extra special skills.
They're needed.
So what would you say about all this, Meredith?
When you're sharing, it makes me remember that I tend not wanting to own it, but definitely being that person that says, oh, no, I didn't mean like that. And when I say that, listening to you, I hear what that means so much different than what I think it means in the moment. Like I recently was explaining to my partner, like, I think we were in the car and I was like, don't you have to turn there? Or don't pick up your phone. There could be a cop or like something. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm looking out for this person. And then he stops and is like, hey, like you're super short with me this whole car ride. And I immediately just went into, oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. And I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to help correct the story he told wrong in his head. I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to look out for him. I'm going to help him now. Instead of just going, oh, this person that's important to me in my life, which in your example, your intimate relationships, those really close people, my partner, for example, felt like I was being super just critical, like for a whole car ride. And instead of going, shoot, oh, dang, it's super not that difficult to go, I'm sorry for making you feel like I was being short. You know, I could adjust my tone a little, which is really hard because I tend to not hear my own tone of voice. I just went into thinking it was a good thing to tell him I didn't mean it like that. So my challenge in this thing is, what's another phrase for saying that without saying that?
Your goal.
Yeah. Or how do I get out of my own head by thinking I have to correct something? Relates, I think, Teighlor, to what you were saying is, what does it say about me that I can't allow him to get his feelings hurt by me? Because then that means I'm mean. Or I said something in a way, they took it in a way I didn't mean. So I need to correct that instead of just kind of leaning in to how they received my message for just a hot second.
Yeah.
Because I'd like somebody to do that for me.
And so then if you lean in, you don't have to decide who's right or wrong or whether you meant it or not. You lean into the impact and just explore what your partner's feeling.
I was saying it makes me think about the image that you created earlier, which is that what the person speaking intends to say doesn't always, maybe sometimes it doesn't always just directly equal the impact that the person's hearing. Like the mouth doesn't equal what the hearer hears all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's super hard, especially as somebody that's, for me, it's like, oh, I must communicate in a way that you don't feel hurt by me. And if I did it, then I just have to stop that and correct it. But instead of just, for me, it's that image of leaning into somebody saying it happened. So I have to accept that I'm human. And sometimes my tone is wrong. And I was short with this person in the car. And I just need to say, okay, I'm sorry to that. And then it's not about being right or wrong, but about keeping moving forward.
Yeah. And that kind of goes to the bigger math, like we were talking about with Teighlor, the calculating the overall relationship a little more broadly and saying, wait, this is someone I care about. This is someone I trust. This is someone I believe in. So I'm going to tolerate this place that I don't want to do and entertain that you might be hurt and maybe explore it and maybe own the fact that I might have done that. I, by the way, hate doing that, taking responsibility.
That's what I hate.
Hate it so much.
I don't want to do that, but here's what I find. You get into the quandary. I didn't mean it, but you're taking it that way. So now what do we do? Because it's like a tie.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it.
It's totally a tie.
You're taking it that way. And you know what breaks the tie? The impact. I think you have to go with what's felt.
So in this example, for me, in that moment where I say something, I guess my tone is sharp or whatever it is, or whoever you're talking to, this person's close to you and they respond like, hey, your tone of voice or you're being sharp. Instead of reacting with like, I didn't mean that, and trying to just cut him off, how do we lean in and listen to that moment better? How do I help prevent the car accident?
Oh, and you want to prevent the relationship accident too. It seems to me, if you're going to focus on the impact, you have to understand what's being felt. You could say, how do I sound to you?
Oh, I have to ask that.
Rough.
No, I'm serious. That's a really good question. So ask, how do I, like, I'm actually trying to remember this. How do I sound to you?
Or how are you hearing me? What are you hearing that you don't like?
Oh, that's a good one. It makes me think of when you're younger and your mom says, you like roll your eyes or you make a face and someone's like, stop, like wipe that face, like that facial expression off your face. And you're like, I'm not doing anything. And then my mom used to say, I'm looking at your face. Like, I see the face you're making. You don't see the face you're making. It almost makes me think somebody's hearing my tone of voice, even though I don't hear it. So what are you hearing from me? And how do I sound to you?
How does it sound?
How do I sound to you right now? Oh my gosh. And then believe them when they tell you.
Well, here's the part that sucks right there is the bravery you have to put on to ask that question. To Teighlor's point, if it's housed in a trusting relationship, it's going to go way better than if it's not. But that goes with the research, right? Because we said, hey, when we're outside observers, we don't get it. When we're not in a close relationship with people, we don't line up. So you're not going to do a very good job if you, let's say you cut someone off parking in the 7-Eleven parking lot and you go in to get a Slurpee and you see the other driver in there and they say, what's your problem? You don't have a trusting relationship with them. So your ability to manage what was meant, whether I meant to cut you off or not, is really limited without relationship knowledge, right?
Yeah.
We would say, yes, you could say, how do you hear me? Or how does this sound to you? But we would only do that in a trusting relationship. We don't do that at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Because we get maybe in a fight at the 7-Eleven.
That's what's really scary to me, though, is looking back on a lot of relationships that I didn't go back to for clarification, whether I was hurt or maybe they were hurt, and how many relationships that might have cost me over time.
Yeah, it's tough to be brave. I mean, I think that's where we've talked about the 1-by-1. Maybe we'll do that every time, but talk about the idea of those people who we care about the most and saying, let's try to be brave there. And I guess what I'd also say, Meredith, to your question about how does that sound to ask about that moment? How was that impact felt for you? I think we have to practice it in our safest spaces before it becomes a normal part of our communication on a wider scale.
So there you have it, episode 1, all the way to 100, which is where we are today. Now, if you're wondering what episode 0 is, episode 0 is our introduction to our podcast. Check that out if you want to hear where it all started.
Once again, thank you for joining us today. Please remember to rate, share, and subscribe to our podcast. And thank you for listening to Asking for a Friend.
Let us know what you thought of the episode. Our email is hello@afafpodcast.com. This show is for educational purposes only and is copyrighted. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. Thanks for listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc.